Excellent. I think that's most people are in now. I remember, because I've given many really big talks in many places in the world, I was told that if you really are a VIP, or in my case a VIM, you know what a VIM is, don't you? Very important monk. When you go to give the talk, you'd always arrive late. Because that's what Lady Gaga does, Celine Dion, Brad Pitt, they always arrive late. So I can't be a VIP or a VIM. Always try and arrive on time, which is wonderful. But trying to continue on the talk, actually that was one of the points in my CV many years ago, because when I was giving a talk in Medan in Indonesia, they said they had a big hall, about 3,000 or 4,000 people in that hall. And it's at the same time, not actually in Medan, but in Jakarta, Lady Gaga was giving a concert. And I don't think maybe about 2,000, well, roughly the same number of people. But they told me that Lady Gaga's tickets, they sold out in about 40 minutes, where the tickets to Ajahn Brahm's talk sold out in 20 minutes. So they said, yeah, here's more famous Lady Gaga. They never said actually that the cost of the tickets, because the cost of my ticket was only a few cents just to register everybody. And hers was much more expensive. We don't mention that. Anyway, and that's one of the reasons why you never want to sort of sell Dhamma or put a price on it. And so many of those stories, it hasn't happened just once, but quite a few times, that people give you a call and say, is there a meditation teaching tonight? And there's always a meditation teaching somewhere. And he said, yeah, there is. And said, how much do you charge? I say, nothing. Nothing, it's for free. They say, well, you can't be any good then, and hang up. It's true, you know, because you think if it's free, you know, what's its purpose? Many people get conditioned like that. So I never, ever, ever say it's free anymore. You always say it is priceless, yeah, priceless. Because it's a lovely word, priceless. It means it's beyond price. You shouldn't put a monetary value on it. And so much of the best things in life, they're like that. They're beyond price. You don't even consider money for them. And of course, that's the most wonderful things you can experience in life, the priceless teachings, the priceless happiness, the priceless love, the priceless kindness. And anyway, going back to the 5 hindrances. See if I can do it this time. The first thing I'd like to say is that sometimes that many people, because they have been influenced by the Vipassana tradition, and they, you know, still it's a good tradition. It says many good things, but there's a few things there that people miss out. And I just don't want to detract from it, but add to it. And one of those things to add to it, for those people who've done that Vipassana tradition before, they mostly base it on the 4 satipatthanas, the 4 focuses of mindfulness, or foundations of mindfulness, as they say. But I always remember that if you look carefully at that sutta, before you do any of those satipatthana practices, insight practices on the body, on, well, they say it's feelings, but I call it like experience, sensory experience, the mind or the mind objects. Before you do any of those, there's a prerequisite required. What are you going to do beforehand, the foundation, before you even start doing that mindfulness practice? And part of that is in Pali, it's called Vinaya Lokaya Bijanamanasang. And it's usually translated as having abandoned grief and covetousness for the world. Now, it is really good, even now, to be a little bit rebellious, like I was always rebellious. And just that never made any sense to me. What does that mean? Grief for the world? Yeah, maybe grief for your mum or your dad who passed away, but for the world? It's not the right word for this. And covetousness for the world? Covetousness is when somebody else has got a lovely teddy bear and you want it. And again, that's, no, it wasn't very powerful enough. And so this couldn't be the the beginnings of this great practice of the 4 foundations of mindfulness. So of course, later on, when you learn Pali, and Pali isn't that hard to learn, it's a very simple, logical language, and you read it and you find out, hey, these words keep coming up again and again and again and again and again. Loke abhijja was one word, and domanassa was the other word. And when I saw these, they were always in the list of the 5 hindrances. The first hindrance of kamachanda, basically they call it sensory desire, but even that's a bit misleading. 5 sensory desire with the 5 senses, seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, touching. That type of desire. And that sometimes instead of having kamachanda, they had loke abhijja. It was what we call a synonym, 2 words which mean exactly the same. And especially in one of the great groups of teachings here in Guttara Nikaya, about 60% of the time it was loke abhijja, and about 40% of the time kamachanda. So it was well known as a different way of saying the same thing. And same with Dhammanasang, there was 2 suttas I read where that was in place of the second hindrance of ill will. So it was quite clear that those 2 terms meant, vinaya means having suppressed, restrained the first 2 hindrances. But what about the other hindrances? And he looked in the commentaries to both Satipatthana suttas, and they both stated quite clearly that sometimes when you have a group of qualities, sometimes it's just the idiom. You mention the first 2, and you mean all the other ones in that group. So even the commentary said that what that word means is having abandoned the 5 hindrances. And once I read that, it also kind of made sense, because if you're going to do even insight practice, if those hindrances are still strong, as I said yesterday, you only see what you want to see, and you're in denial of what is unpleasant to see. And you have the restlessness or the sloth and torpor or the doubt, and that also confuses the mind, and you cannot see clearly. So even for the Satipatthana, it makes so much sense that you have to restrain the hindrances. And for those of you who are very alert this morning, that it's not abandon the hindrances. Abandoning the hindrances is the job of either the jhanas or the enlightenment experiences. This is restraining them, softening them, making them very weak. So you have a chance to, what you're aware of, you know it's real. So little by little, when we see the importance of these 5 hindrances, you see that's one of the practices which the Eightfold Path is supposed to be working on. So all these hindrances get weaker and weaker and weaker. And as somebody said last night, you can't expect to abandon every desire, when you're a layperson. You can't expect to abandon every desire when you're a monk. Because later on I'll have the desire, not now because I've already been, later on you'll have the desire to go to the toilet. So what should you do? Should you restrain that desire? No, I won't go. I'm just following desire. And do your business on your seat. That's not going to get you very far. So there's some desires where you want to sort of calm down and make very peaceful. And other, sensible desires, which is basically just on loving kindness to yourself and to others, and your compassion, sympathetic joy, and I don't like the word equanimity anymore. I usually call it contentment instead. Contentment is a much better word. Because contentment is a powerful emotion. It's not a nothing word. It really means something very intense. Which is one of the reasons why, if ever you want to, you're fed up with watching the breath or fed up with watching this or that, just use contentment as what you watch when you meditate. See here, contentment, 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 and feel the contentment. And just let it sort of really grow in you to teach you some parts of it which you haven't experienced before. Really deep contentment, powerful contentment. Which is one of the reasons why, again, being a little bit rebellious, I keep saying, don't remember anything from the past. Let the past go, let the future go, and you stay in the present moment. But sometimes you can make use of the past. I say let go of the past because sometimes the past comes into you and disturbs you. But sometimes the past can be very interesting if you use it wisely. Not just remembering past lives, but I often do the meditation and teach it as well, that in all your life so far, all the years you've lived, what are some of the most happiest moments of your life? I don't mean like your team winning the competition, or you graduating, or you're getting married or whatever, or having your first kid. Not exciting happiness, but really peaceful, long-lasting, stable happiness. And sometimes I remember some of those happy experiences which I had, and I look back upon them, and it wasn't because I'd suddenly come into a lot of money, or you've fallen in love, or you passed your exams, or because you were with this really wonderful people. Some of the happiest moments of my life were when I was just sitting by like a lake or a river or in a mountain somewhere. You had this experience, you didn't want to be anywhere in the whole world except right here. It wasn't the most perfect place, but it was a place where you could just sit and rest. And the people with me, or the absence of people with me, that was fine. I didn't want to get rid of anybody or invite anybody into this moment. And the weather wasn't maybe just the warmest or the coolest, but it was good enough. And if I had a remote control for the weather system, I would not change it at all. And my body, it wasn't the best, not the worst. It was good enough. And I could just be at peace with it. And when I remembered some of the most happiest moments of my life, it was weird, because it wasn't dependent on where I was or who I was with or the state of my health. It was a state of my reaction, my relationship to what I was experiencing. I was content. It was that contentment which I noticed was giving me some of the most beautiful times of my life. And they were simple times. They weren't cross-legged in a deep meditation hall or listening to an inspiring Dhamma talk by Ajahn. It was just happened just any old place. I remember just once going for lunch. I was working, saving some money up to actually get an air ticket to go to Thailand. And the job I was working, it was not far from Hyde Park. And I would just, for lunch, take a few sandwiches and go and sit by the lake in Hyde Park in London. You know what that lake was called? Serpentine. It was a sign. It was an omen. No, I didn't know. But anyway, just sitting there, and it was not the springtime, sometime, not warm, maybe a little bit of drizzle, not the best place to sit, but there was a sense of, this is my lunch hour, and I'm going to enjoy this. And I felt this incredible sense of equanimity or contentment. In this moment, I'd have to go to work again in 20 minutes' time, but right now, this is beautiful. And I remember that. Somehow or other, you touched the trick of how to be really still, content, and happy. And it did not depend upon people around you or the place you were in. Just like in meditation, the equanimity, the contentment, it can happen any old time. You don't need to have nimittas. You don't need to even have your eyes closed. It's much better with your eyes closed. It becomes more intense. But then you have this beautiful sense of you're happy to be here. And that happiness to be here is also illustrated. And I remember this story because apparently it was recently with the COVID situation in Thailand. Many of those stories have been translated into Thai. And this one, apparently somebody sent me the message that it was in Thairat magazine, Thairat, the newspaper, the most the most popular newspaper in Thailand, on how to deal with lockdown in Bangkok during COVID time. And they were quoting that story about that monk who went into prison And he was asked by the prisoners, his group, what's it like in Bodhinyana Monastery? What's your schedule? How do you live? Because they respected this monk and they just wanted to know what monastic life is like. And when he said, well, you have to get up at 4 o'clock in the morning, the prisoners were shocked. What? 4 o'clock in the morning? Even murderers don't have to get up until 6. And of course, that's when he said that it's optional, getting up at 4 o'clock in Bodhinyana Monastery. It's optional. You can always get up earlier if you want to. That's the only option. And then they asked him, what do you do next? Can you turn on the TV and just watch the late night movie or something? Of course you can't. We don't have TVs in Bodhinyana Monastery. And it was something which was so sort of foreign to me, TVs as a monk, that when somebody said, and they were very disappointed, that one of these forest monks in the south of Thailand had got a TV. Just the way that your hindrances work. What I heard, monks don't have TVs. So I said, who's got TB? That's easily curable these days. And I said, no, it's not TB, Ajahn, it's TV. Well, that's even worse disease. So anyway, I said, no, we meditate in the morning. Anything to do, it's a walking meditation or do some study if you want to, some chanting if you want to learn it. And then we have our breakfast at about 6:30. The reason, in the forest tradition, we're supposed to have one meal a day, but I started introducing breakfast because for people to bring the food all the way from Perth to Serpentine, it's an hour's journey. And to try and get them to come early enough was just too hard for them. So we said, no, come sort of at 10:30, 11 o'clock for our meal. But then in the morning time, the monks work. Even right now, they're out there doing the chores in Bodhinyana Monastery, or up here at the top of the hill there, building 6 new kutis, 6 new huts. So, sometimes we work very hard, so you have to have something in the morning at breakfast. So have the breakfast and a lunch, but nothing else. And what do you have for breakfast? And those of you who go over to Bodhinyana Monastery, and Ben, you were staying there recently, you see that, what I have is just usually a cup like this with 3 Weetabix in it. And some milk, of course. And a cup of tea. With some condensed milk, of course. But, one of the reasons I took that condensed milk, because my father, during the Second World War, sometimes they didn't have any milk. And so, because all the supply lines were all bombed out. And so that condensed milk was what he used to have. And so, I don't know that sometimes you have so much love for your parents, even though they're dead, that sometimes it kind of reminds me of him. He used to call it, he was from Liverpool, he used to call it konioni. Instead of condensed milk, that's a slang term for it. But anyway, so after the breakfast, again we work. And now I don't work that much these days, but many of you have seen me on top of the roofs. Some of the things I've done working absolutely stupid. But also to show how the monks work, to demonstrate it. And I tell this story every retreat because it moves me. I get emotional happiness out of this little story. We were building Jhana Grove, and I was the main sort of organizer of it, as well as doing all the other businesses. And when it came to starting to arrange the opening ceremony, I asked the builders, is it going to be finished? When's it going to be finished? January. Finish in January. And I thought, well, I know enough about builders, maybe March. And it came to January, it was way far from finished. And we had the opening ceremony on the Good Friday, just so we can have an opening ceremony, and then we can do the retreat, the Easter retreat afterwards. And said, are you sure it's going to be finished in that time? I remember their manager looked at me and said, do you doubt my competence? And some of these builders are really big. So no. But I should have doubted it because it wasn't finished. So the last couple of days we really rushed to get the place ready, but the most difficult thing to finish was this floor, the bamboo floor. We had all the bits and pieces, but we couldn't get anybody to work on it. And we were going to pay them much more money than they could expect for doing this work. But it came on the evening, the Thursday evening before the Good Friday, couldn't finish it. And this half, which all you people there are sitting on, was just concrete, bare concrete. So it was about 6 o'clock in the evening, bare concrete. What are we going to do? You can't get any Australian builders to work at that time. So what should we do? And we're having the big opening ceremony the following morning. Thousands of, maybe a couple of thousand people, and starting the retreat just straight afterwards. So, what was it? The ex-premier, who is a patron of Jhana Grove. What's his name again? Gallup, Jeff Gallup. He's our patron of Jhana Grove, and he came to officiate at the opening. We had all these important people coming, and it wasn't finished. No floor. So, how did we finish it off? The Sangha! We came to the rescue. And so they'll be working all day, and some of these monks, okay, we'll work all night. And so I know that Ajahn Brahmavamso was involved, and the main culprit was Ajahn Santuti. He was up here all night as well. And they worked about 4 o'clock in the morning, continually, to finishing this floor you're sitting on now. So they could, after the 4 o'clock, when they went back, they had an hour or two to rest, and then to come out for the big ceremony. And sometimes I feel that, I'm glad it happened that way. I'm glad it wasn't finished in time. So, and this is not our place, this is for you guys. So it's beautiful, the way that we work as our service for others, because it's a beautiful thing to do. Why not do it? So anyway, I was very happy about that. But anyway, that's how hard we work. And the prison said, they'll never get us to work that hard. Not in prison. If the floor's not finished, they'll finish it. But it's a wonderful thing that, if something needs to be done, and you're involved somehow or other, then you always want to help out and give as much as you can. And even if it's staying up all night, what the heck. But when you do stay up all night, and you're doing it not for money or not for yourself, but for some greater purpose, you always get this big boost of energy. It's something which, the sloth and torpor hindrance, where does energy come from? It's not from Red Bull or coffee or tea. It comes from something much deeper than that, the real energy. And where I learned that was that story. I'm just going off the story of how monks and nuns live. The story of first couple of years in Thailand, that in the forest tradition, again very frugal, that our robes, we would have no robes from the shop, that they couldn't afford such things in the northeast. So we had some cloth, and if you wanted to ordain as a monk, you had to make your 3 robes yourself, which was white cloth. And you had to sort of draw out the pattern, sew it all together. And it's a lot of sewing to get the 3 robes. And then the old treadle machines, not the electric ones, the ones you have a little pedal and you push it up and down to get the wheel to go around. And you had to learn how to sew. And then afterwards, to dye the robe yourself, and dye it out of a jackfruit dye, which you had to make yourself. You had pieces of wood from the jackfruit tree, branches which had fallen off, and with a machete, which you had to sharpen yourself to chop the wood to get little chips off the wood, then boil the wood in a stove which you had to make yourself, and you had this big dish which you put ash underneath, a bit of water and ash so it didn't get mouldy. I think not mouldy, rusty. And get the wood from the forest, boil it all up, the water from the well. And even the wells, just a bucket and a piece of rope. No, we did actually have a piece of rope. I don't know if maybe the Sri Lankans have seen this, because the culture is pretty much the same over Southeast Asia. You had a bamboo pole with a little hook on the end. And you had to learn how to actually to lower that into the water and scoop out a bucket of water and put it up. You lost so many buckets at first, but you had to become skillful, because if you lost a bucket, you had to go down the well and retrieve it, because the buckets were very valuable. So you didn't lose too many buckets if you knew you had to go down the well to get them. And it was a really intense work, and there were these 3 monks were going to be ordained, and so they had to make all their robes, and they'd been working for about 2 days straight, so 2 nights without sleep, because you couldn't take a break. It was a continuous work. It's almost like a test of endurance. Do you really want to be a monastic? And after 2 days, I remember going to see them, and they just looked like they were being tortured. They're just so exhausted, so tired. And it's my nature, again, to be a bit of a rebel. And I said, look, I won't say if you don't say. I'll stay up tonight, look after the dye pot. You go and take a break for 3 or 4 hours. They never argued with me. They were off. And so I hadn't slept all day, and now I was going to sleep all night and just doing the dyeing for them. And when you had the bell at 3 o'clock afterwards, they came to take over. Thank you so much. Have you ever had no sleep for such a long time? Just a tiny bit of sleep sometimes takes the edge of the exhaustion. That's all they needed. They could catch up on the rest of their sleep deficit later on. And then I went back because I wanted to keep the secret, because you're not supposed to do that. They're supposed to do it themselves. I went back for the morning meeting, the chanting and meditation. And that morning, I had lots of energy. I could really chant powerfully, yo so. And my back was straight. I wasn't sleepy at all. And I couldn't work out why. I hadn't slept all night. And I should be exhausted, but I wasn't. I remember on the arms round, just really strong sort of stride. And it was so weird. I had to ask the senior monk there at the time, so what's going on? I said, first of all, I confess, I broke a little monastic rule by helping somebody last night. I know I shouldn't have done that. They should have done it themselves, but they were really exhausted. And the monk in charge, he was compassionate. He said, don't worry about that. I can understand why. It's no problem. I said, where did all that energy come from? He said, because you served. Because you helped somebody else. That's where it comes from. Oh, wow. That was so true. That when you're giving selflessly to another, really, it's nothing in it for you. You just go and lay bamboo on the floor just because it needs to be done and I want to do it. And you don't get tired. It's weird. But I've lived many times in my life like that. There's another lady comes to mind that she was in Singapore. She was actually a very big donor to this Jhana Grove and other places. And her husband died. He died on a Friday morning. I got a call from some of the people in Singapore. Husband died, the funeral's going to be tomorrow. Ajahn Brahm, can you come? To Singapore? From Perth? Listen, I've got to give a talk at Monastic Centre tonight. I thought we'd still ask you. It's such a stupid request to accept. That's why I accepted it. Do it, Ajahn Brahm. So I managed to give a call to the Singapore Airlines, and because I'm a frequent flyer, they managed to find a seat on the midnight flight. So after doing the talk at Monastic Centre, and sometimes it's very tiring, all the questions and stuff, and then afterwards, someone gave me a lift to the airport, and on the aircraft to Singapore to do the funeral for her the next day. And I did that because her family had been so kind to us. Why can't I be kind to her? And of course, you weren't tired, which was weird. So whenever you do really nice, good things, it inspires you. It gets almost like some spiritual energy up, for want of a better word. Not physical, but you've got a store of energy there and you can tap into it. and have not just ordinary energy, but very peaceful, inspiring energy. That's one of the reasons why that's a great way to overcome sloth and torpor. You get inspired, wow. And then I should be sleeping. I'm not. So anyway, then we said we work in the morning, do nice things, and then have our lunch, and you've seen our lunch. And then when we told the prisoners, everything goes in the same bowl. They said, that's disgusting. Because apparently even in solitary confinement, when some of those prisoners misbehave, they get a little tray. They've got compartments on it. No compartments in our bowl. And that's true. Sometimes it happens. It's happened to me very often. Sometimes you go, what did I have once? I had strawberry ice cream on spaghetti. Now, you put the strawberry ice cream separately and the spaghetti on another part of your bowl, but carrying upstairs, it all got mixed up. So that's what you ate. Well, it gets mixed up inside, it's mixed up outside. Same thing, isn't it? Actually, it's not. And then they were discussing, not just discussing like you, also interested. This is really weird, but it's interesting that you have a nice positive attitude towards that. What do you do in the afternoon? More meditation, study, or whatever? And they said, well, they asked, do you guys play sport? Can you have a game of football? Or tennis or something? And then I told them of a little fantasy. When Ajahn Jacko was here, but he first came here, you thought, well, one of the important things to do as Buddhists is just to make those connections, with people of other beliefs and other religions. So why don't we start a Buddhist, say, football team? The PSWA football team. And then we can play the Catholics or the Anglicans or whatever. And then, I won't tell this joke, it's really... I'm really attached, obsessed with humour. So when a joke comes up, a funny one you haven't heard for a long time, please, I apologise if I offended you on this joke, but it's a very funny joke. It was the Archbishop of Canterbury and the Pope, the head of the Anglican Church and the head of the Catholic Church. They wanted to sort of meet together and find out which is the correct form of Christianity. So let Jesus decide, or God decide. So they decided to have a golf match. And whoever won the golf match, if the Pope won the golf match, then obviously the God preferred Catholic Christianity. So the Archbishop, the Anglican, said, I will convert to being a Catholic. But if the Anglican won it, then the Pope would have to convert to being an Anglican Christian. That was the deal. So it was touch and go to the last hole, the 18th hole. And on the 18th hole, the Archbishop already finished his round and holed his putt, but the Pope was 2 shots ahead. And if the Pope sank this putt, he would win by 2 shots. So the Pope, he asked for his putter from his caddy. And this is a bit of an offensive thing, please excuse me, but the caddy was a nun. We never do that in our Buddhist tradition. To exploit the nuns. Maybe. So he asked his nun, for the putter, and he took the putter, and he was so excited, he hit it too hard. So it missed the hole, went a couple of feet past. But still, that made him, if he could sink the next putt, he would still win by 1 stroke. So he got another putter out. After he missed the first putt, because of excitement, he swore. He said, damn it. Damn it, missed. And the nun heard it. She crossed herself, whichever way it goes. And she said, Your Holiness, you shouldn't swear. I said, oh, it's just excitement. No, God will forgive me. And he did the second putt. Again, this is to win and get the... Imagine that. The head of the Anglican Church would become a Catholic. Whoa. So he putted it, not hard enough. So it fell short of the hole. Damn it, missed, he said. And the Pope, the nun, looked up in the heavens, crossed herself. Your Holiness, don't do that. It's dangerous. He said, oh, sorry, it's just the stress. But anyway, if you hold the next putt, it needs to be a draw. No one would have to convert. So it's really important. So he looked at the ball, looked at the distance, looked at the lay of the land, and he got the putt, and he hit it straight towards the hole. But it went on the rim and out. And he couldn't help himself. Say it really loud this time. Damn it, missed. And at that, as the nun was crossing herself, there was this big roar from the heavens. And a bolt of lightning cracked down from the heavens and hit the nun. And she died. And this big roar came from the heavens. Damn it, missed. Please excuse me. Anyway, that's one of the reasons why religious people should not play sports. So no, we don't play sports. So what about in the evening? What time do you have dinner? I said, we're monks, nuns, we don't have dinner. Cup of tea. That's not much for a dinner. But anyway, so there, well, what do you do afterwards? You know, in the evening time. Can you play cards? Have a game of poker? I said, no, we meditate some more. And apparently the monk actually said this to me. He said, the prisoners asked, do you ever get tired of meditation? And he said, yeah, sometimes. Are you honest? So what time do you go to bed? Bed? We don't have beds. We sleep on the floor. Oh, God. So in the end, those prisoners, they were just saying, that's a terrible place you live in, Jhana Monastery. And they said, and this was actually the nice part, because when the monk told me this and told all the monks this is when we really cracked up and couldn't stop laughing. And many of you heard it before. But one of the prisoners said, that's terrible where you live in your monastery. Why didn't you come in here and stay with us instead? And he had a point. Because it is more comfortable in a prison in Western Australia than it is in Jhana Monastery. To be honest. And Dhammasara as well, probably. So why do people want to become monks and nuns? And that got me sort of contemplating. A lot of the great insights of life you get from your experiences, and some of them are really quite weird. And so what's the difference between a prison and freedom? There's only one difference. In Jhana Monastery, people want to be there. In a prison, they don't want to be there. It doesn't matter how comfortable it is. If you don't want to be there, it's called a prison. And that just, wow, that's an insight about wanting and ill will. You want to be somewhere else, it's called a prison. In your meditation, you'll be sitting here, and have a think about this is Jhana Grove, Club Med. You don't have to keep sitting. You can go out for a walk if you wish. Have a cup of tea and juice, whatever you want. You can go and take a rest. How many places can you go and have a rest, have a sleep after Ajahn Brahm's talk? How many places you can have a sleep during Ajahn Brahm's talk? So there's a great sense of freedom here. the freedom to want to be here. And that is a huge trick in meditation. Sometimes I stop myself if meditation is not getting deep. Well, where do you want to be? Oh, yeah, I want to be somewhere else. You're in nimittas and you want to be in jhanas. You're just watching the breath and you want to be in nimittas. You want to be somewhere else. How much of your life you have the time lost because you always want to be somewhere else? So sometimes I stop myself when I'm meditating and say, I'm happy to be here. And I really mean it. You get this beautiful sense of contentment. You're maybe not in the nimittas or jhanas or anywhere. You're just with this little old breath and it's not really all that easy or peaceful. But I say, I want to be here. You get this wonderful feeling of contentment, even with a sick and painful body. Because we'll get sicknesses and pains, but some pains are more than others. Some pains last longer than others. But sometimes when you are in pain, or sick, tired, aching, I always remember that simile. I say, I want to be here, literally. When I want to be here, I'm making this beautiful relationship with my sickness. Some years ago, I had these two Thai sisters came for some marriage counselling. They were sisters, so they came together. And they still come every now and again. This was about 20, 30 years ago. And it was a wonderful little anecdote because I don't know why they come to see monks. Because of marriage counselling, we'd never been married. What do we know? But he said, well, you're cheap. It's true. You can get some counselling and you don't have to pay a bill afterwards. You go to some of these other places, they're really expensive. But anyway, those are these two young Thai ladies. They're quite attractive, young. And the first one was already married and having really a lot of trouble with her Western husband. And she said, should I get divorced? And it's just really so much pain and difficulties being married. All the people who've got husbands, it's how difficult it is in a marriage. Or got wives, just how, it takes a lot of sacrifice to make it work. But anyway, that I gave her some, the usual stories, the difference between the chicken and the duck, and just all the other stories about it's about us, not about me, not about you. So I gave some nice anecdotes because it's usually what I've noticed anyway is that all guys are the same. So if you get rid of that one and get another one, it's the same story again. You may think that's simplistic, but there's a lot of truth behind that. So then I counselled her and she felt a bit happier. Then I asked her younger sister, what's your difficulty? And her one was, she was single. And she was always trying to find her partner in life. Would find somebody and then go out with them, but the longest the relationship would last would be about a month. It'd all fall apart and she had to go and find somebody else. She was getting fed up with this. She wanted to, get some advice how to find a partner which you can stick with. And of course, being a monk, the answer was obvious. Your sisters, you grow up together, you share. Your elder sister got a husband she doesn't want. You want one. For some reason, they thought I was joking. But then after that, you got the really deep stuff to add to this little anecdote. And I looked at the elder sister. You got a husband and you're suffering. So in Buddhism, we call that married woman's suffering. If you get rid of your husband, you will get what your younger sister has, single woman suffering. And if both of you decide, well, just this marriage and relationship is really too hard, if you decide to become a nun, you won't have married woman suffering, You won't have single woman suffering. You'll have none suffering. Isn't that true? And that just opens up all this idea of wanting. I don't know your financial situation, but if you're very poor, you have poor person suffering. And if, for some wonderful reason you win the lottery, I don't know how much, $40 million, you won't have poor woman suffering or poor man suffering anymore. What will you have? Rich man suffering. And it's true. Rich people still have suffering. Being quite a well-known Buddhist monk, you go and see all these places where these rich people are, and some are incredibly wealthy. But are they happy? Oh no. They have rich person suffering. And so because they're rich and there's always people want to have some of your money, they get sort of very paranoid and anxious. And sometimes, they cut a few corners to get their wealth, and so they have to go to jail. When you go to jail, you have, what I tell the prisoners, you have a jail prisoner suffering. And they can't wait until the moment they get released from jail. They think all their suffering is over. No way. Now you've got free person suffering. Can you ever see in your life, you're always replacing one brand of suffering for another brand of suffering? Because you think, once I become a monk, then I can be happy. Once I get into deep meditation, then I can be happy. Many of you have experienced some deep meditation. When you come out again, I want to go back there, I can't get back there, this is suffering. You're sick. Have you ever been sick and just waiting for the moment when you're healthy again? When you're sick, you've got sick person suffering. When you're healthy, you have healthy person suffering. Especially you've been sick recently, and you don't want to get back there again, and so you're really anxious about this. In a week's time, I think, the Cancer Association are coming to visit. I'm going to see them over in Cottesloe. Been going over there for, ever since I first came to Perth, about 37 years now, every year. And I think a couple of years ago, they led on why they keep inviting me. And it was the first time which I went there to teach them meditation. Their place is over in Claremont. Yeah, Claremont. Or Cottesloe. I think it's Cottesloe. Anyway, just not that far from the river. And from the ocean. So when I went there, after teaching some meditation, there was this question time. The woman put her hand up, and a youngish woman, she said she did have breast cancer, and now she was in remission. But she said she was so anxious that she might get cancer back again, that it recurs. She said, if it recurs, I don't know if I can stand the treatment and the anxiety and the pain again. She was really so concerned. And so she asked, what should I do? What would happen if the cancer comes back again? And without missing a beat, I answered, "Ma'am, what would happen if the cancer didn't come back?" And she put the microphone down. Oh yeah, she never thought of that possibility before. And she said I was the first person who answered her question accurately, because she was always so worried. What would happen if it comes back? What would happen if it comes back? What would happen if it comes back? I was the first person to say, what would happen if it didn't come back? And it didn't come back. But she comes back every year to see me. And that is that positive. You can obviously understand the other day when about hope or sort of being realistic. If she'd have kept thinking, what would happen if it came back? What would happen? I can't stand if it came back. Then that stress would increase the probability of it returning. Because you focus on what would happen if it didn't come back, she saw the positive side. That kept it from reoccurring. So that's why that positive attitude, it can create a beautiful world. Even good health for you. So anyway, this is like being happy to be here, and also feeling that when I get to this other stage, then I'll be happy. No. Right now, be happy. Whatever your stage you're in. So this is how to overcome that wanting and that ill will. Crikey. And so you can have a happy meditation. This actually works, it's not just theory. So am I happy to be here when I'm meditating? I was really tired this morning, I don't know why. But I'm happy to be tired. That is the best way of overcoming sloth and torpor. Happy to be here. If you're negative, it's like people with depression. Lady gave me a call. She was a Sri Lankan lady from over in Brisbane, I think. And she had to call me. She wanted to come and say thank you personally, all the way from Brisbane to Perth. Say thank you for saving her life. But she couldn't because of COVID. Maybe she can now. But so she called me up anyway and said, about a year ago, I gave you a call. I was really, really bad depression, and you taught me just to be with the depression. Don't try and get rid of it. Don't be depressed about being depressed. It'll pass by itself. I said, it's true, it passed. And he said, if I was suicidal, because when I heard you, it wasn't so bad. So you saved my life. So many stories like that. Same with tiredness. If you try and fight the tiredness, you don't like the tiredness, it lasts much longer. You leave the tiredness of sloth and torpor around, alone, it's just there, you're tired. It's cause and effects. Things like the rain last night just woke me up. Beautiful rain, wasn't it? This time of year, yay. But I should have been in bed. But you can see the causes, and so you just allow yourself to be tired. And that's the best way of overcoming sloth and torpor. It's the best way of overcoming depression. Allow it to be. And what happens when you let it be? You're not wasting energy. Because sloth and torpor, tiredness, depression, it's a really low energy state. And if you try and fight it, you're wasting energy. If you're negative to it, again, you're not creating any energy. You're wasting it all the time. Your body, your mind creates its own sort of energy source. You just have to let that build up until the sloth and torpor, or depression, starts to disappear. I notice that again so many times in monastic life. You're really tired and you fight the tiredness, and sometimes you break through the tiredness, the sloth and torpor. You're really tired in the morning, and then come on, get your act together, Ajahn. You can do this. Come on, come on, come on. And then you straighten up. Then you're restless. You can't stop thinking. Come on, calm down, Ajahn, calm down, Ajahn, calm down. And you go to sleep again. And that was just so repetitive for years. Until one day you just give up. It's sloth and torpor. I'd just be sleepy. You just waste the time fighting it. And so that's what I did. In the morning, getting up, 3 o'clock in the morning, hardly much sleep at all, malnourished in a really hot climate. I just let it be. People keep on saying let it be. Sometimes you say you don't know how to do this. Yeah, you do, but you don't want to do this. You think you should do something else. So I decided, let's give letting be a chance. So let it be. And I never did anything. But you started to see the tiredness disappearing, slowly. And then you see your body straighten up all by itself. I never did that. The body did it. And just the posture just adjusting itself. And the mind becoming clear. And the tiredness was vanished. But you didn't have the restlessness and so much thinking afterwards. You were clear. You found this beautiful middle spot between sloth and torpor and restlessness. You were balanced and energized. And you do that a few times, you say, now I know my mistake. When I'm sleepy, I'm just going to be sleepy. I'm mindful enough to know I'm sleepy, and just leave it alone. Be kind to it. Sleepiness, the door of my heart's open to you. When you do that, what happens is the sleepiness can't last very long. When it does go, you have this beautiful clarity and purity of mind. Then you can go into some really nice meditations. And the last hindrance, I've actually sort of done it. Oh, ill will. First of all, ill will can be towards anybody. Ill will is this emotion inside of you. Whoever happens to come in front of your ill will sort of zapping machine, you zap them. It can be anyone. And so that's why sometimes you're in a bad mood, and I come up to you, how are you doing? Ajahn Brahm. So what have I done? Nothing. It's just you've got ill will, and whoever happens to come into that place gets it. So if you're the recipient of ill will, don't take it personally. You haven't done anything wrong. It's just the person's in a bad mood, and so keep clear of them if you can't handle ill will from somebody else. But it's just a person. It's sometimes when you express ill will, it's almost just an expression of, I'm not feeling very good. So if somebody really gets ill will towards you, just give them always kindness. So just go and take a rest. Is there anything you need? And after a while, just kindness always is the antidote to ill will. And no human being can resist sincere kindness. And after a while, okay, I still feel bad, Ajahn Brahm, but not about you. But anyway, the doubt, that fifth hindrance, very few people actually talk much about doubt. So the joke, first of all. Because the Buddha described ill will, it described doubt as being lost in the desert. No signpost, you don't know where to go, which way is left, which way is right, which way is safety. In the same way that sometimes in meditation, what type of meditation should I do? It's not working. What temple should I go to? What should I do in life? There's no signposts. So that's why the Buddha called it like in a desert. And it reminded me of the story of this man who was lost in the desert for days. And it was so hot, there's no water supply. So he was actually crawling on his hands and knees under the really hot sun in this big sandy desert. And he'd been doing this for days. And he realized that he only had maybe an hour or two left of life. The sun was bearing down upon him. His heat stroke, sunstroke, lack of water, dehydration, and he was really in a bad way. And he saw something shimmer on the horizon. It looked like something was coming in his direction, but he was been in the sun for such a long time. He thought this is a mirage, or he's going crazy. But as it came closer, it looked like there was something which was actually coming towards him, a vehicle or something. He didn't know what, but of course he doubted it, because it's in the middle of the desert, and there's a good reason why he could be hallucinating, just close to death, and just dehydrated, or really weak because of the hot sun. But as it got even closer, he could hear noises with it as well. It was like dogs barking. He thought, this is weird, I must be really losing it. But as it really came close, he could pick it out, and his eyes were good enough. It was a dog sled with 6 husky dogs pulling a sled. And on the sled was this gentleman wrapped in furs. An Inuit, what they used to call Eskimos. And he looked at this and said, this is weird, but it's real. I've been saved. I'm going to live. And he burst out crying and screaming and said, thank you to the Eskimo. I've been lost in this desert for days. And the Eskimo said, and you think you're lost? Okay. That's an old joke, but I like that one. Anyway, back to... Oh my goodness. The reason I tell the jokes is I find them funny, even though I've told them many times. I laugh at my own jokes. Cheers me up. But the real story, with the best story I've found for overcoming doubt, it actually comes from something the Buddha said when he gave his advice to his first disciple, Bhikkhuni Mahapajapati. And she just asked for a simple teaching. And he said, look, whatever practice, teaching, leads to turning away from the world, for things disappearing and fading and cessation, which leads to peace. It's a wonderful word, upasama, which leads to enlightenment. If it's leading in the right direction, you can know that that's a teaching of the Buddha. And it's a very brilliant teaching because it wasn't full of dogma or you have to do it this way, you have to do it that way. It's, how does it work for you? Does it lead to peace and liberation and freedom? And I remember that. And I also remember the time as a student, poor student. I used to spend a lot of my vacations up in north of Scotland. And I've already mentioned one story of falling over the cliff. This was when I went up to the very north of Scotland and just staying in a youth hostel, hardly anyone there. And the warden of the hostel said, "Do you want to come up the mountain today? Because it's a very beautiful day." So we went up a walk up to one of the nearest mountains, about 2 or 3 hour walk. And when we got to the top, we just enjoyed the view for a while, sat down. There's another mountain not that far away. I said, "How about the second mountain?" He said, "No, you go by yourself. I'm going back to the hostel." So I went by myself, which is always a bad idea in such terrain, to go by yourself. So I went to this second mountain, and I started off, it was just a beautiful day, not a cloud in the sky. And as I got to the second mountain, just maybe about 10 minutes from the top of the second mountain, you could see the clouds come in from the Atlantic Ocean. And those clouds kept coming in, and I couldn't believe how fast they came in. And as they came in from the ocean, they descended over the mountain I was walking on. And it was really thick cloud mist. And much thicker than I'd seen in places like London. And when I held up my hand, you could hardly see sort of the 5 fingers on your hand. It was that thick. I was on top of a mountain, and there were cliffs and stones and rocks, and it was a dangerous place. And if I did trip and, say, break a leg and couldn't walk, that would probably be the worst form of death, because it would take days. And it would be very difficult to find anybody. And so I was quite worried. But I always thought you can just go and retrace your steps, and you go down the mountain, find your way back down again. That was the first time I really thought I was going back the way I came. But I found out later I was going in totally the opposite direction. In the mist or in darkness, you are lost. And human beings don't have much of a sense of direction. So I was very worried when I was walking. I was quite mindful, thank goodness I was a Buddhist and mindful. But I walked and I saw this cliff edge. And literally one more step and I would have fallen over that cliff and I would have died. And I realized, now this is serious, this is dangerous. And it's because later on I looked at the Ordnance Survey map. That cliff was in totally the opposite direction I thought I was going in. And that worried me. So I just stopped and just thought, how am I going to get out of this? And of course the simile which I used was a very obvious one, that there on that mountain there were lots of little lakes, lots of little streams, rivulets. And one thing I know from theoretical physics, that water always goes downhill from all sides. So what I need to do was find a little stream and follow it, no matter which way it went. It goes left this way, that way, zigzagging, no shortcuts. I'm going to follow a little stream. And that little stream went into another stream and became a bit bigger, and that went into something else. But I was always going downhill, going this way and that way, zigzagging all over the place. But I was going to follow that course of water no matter what. And then, it's amazing, 1 second you're under the mist, another couple of steps, you're in the mist, a couple of steps you're under the mist. I could see again. I could see, all of the local topography. And I could see I was a long way away from the hostel, but I could actually see where I was going now, so it was tiring, but you can find your way back. And I thought from that time, that's how what doubt is and how doubt is overcome. Like you're in a mist. You don't know which way to meditate, and it can be dangerous sometimes. So, and you can think you know your directions, you don't. You can take a book, but you can't even read the book in that mist. So if you don't know what meditation is, how to meditate, or what your spiritual life is and where you should be going, what direction, find a stream. If it goes in the correct direction, more peace, more awareness, more love, more health, more sense of freedom, all the positive qualities which you are aiming for. If it's aiming for the positive qualities of life, then follow that stream. So in little things like peace, tranquility, happiness. And if you can't see those qualities grow, I will guarantee when you go back home after this retreat, the people you live with will notice those qualities. You don't have to say, I've had a good retreat or a bad retreat. They'll see it written on your face very clearly, with your behavior, the way you speak. And they say, I said you had a wonderful retreat, well done. It's going in the right direction. Follow that, no matter which way it curves or bends. Because that is going in the correct direction. As the Buddha said, you're developing these things which lead to turning away from the world, nibbida, towards as things fading, the problems disappearing, to peace, tranquility, kindness, all these good qualities which you know should be followed. And that leads you on this way, that way. And when you get under the mist, in this simile that's called stream winner. You see the Dhamma. You know which way to go. It's not sort of just following just qualities. You can see why these qualities are really good and why this works. And then all the doubt is overcome. So you can see the path and which way to go. So practically, when you're meditating here, should I follow Ajahn Brahm's method and just take a rest, or should I be really strict? Should I do more meditation and go through pain or whatever? Find out what happens if you do. See what occurs. If it works for you, fine. If it doesn't work, try something else. What I mean, if it works, it creates more softness and kindness and peace, health, especially peace in your heart. And that's something you can get to know very easily. And if it does create those positive qualities, continue on that path. That's the path to your liberation and how to overcome doubt. There we go. Oops. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Sorry, it's 10 past, so an extra 10 minutes, sorry about that. So now time for interviews.